In 2006, Apple sold a laptop called the MacBook for $1,099. One chip, one size, one decision. Today, Apple's laptop lineup runs from $599 to $7,349. Same logo. Same operating system. Completely different machines. Most people walk into this lineup, spend 45 minutes on the Apple website, and leave more confused than when they started. That's not an accident. Apple built a ladder, and understanding each rung changes whether you spend the right amount or the wrong amount. Here are the 7 levels. Level 1, the MacBook Neo. $599. This machine should not exist. Apple has spent 20 years refusing to sell a Mac under $999. Then in March 2026, they announced the Neo, and it starts at $599. For students, $499. The chip inside it isn't even a Mac chip. It's the A18 Pro, the same processor Apple put in the iPhone 16 Pro. That's not a downgrade they're hiding. Apple says it's 50% faster than the best-selling Windows laptop at this price. They're right. It handles email, documents, browsing, and Apple Intelligence without flinching. But here's what the spec sheet doesn't tell you. You get 2 USB-C ports, one runs at USB 3 speeds, one at USB 2. No MagSafe. No fan. And 8 GB of unified memory with no upgrade path. Ever. Memory is soldered to the chip at purchase. What you configure is what you live with. Who buys this? The college freshman whose parents are finally saying yes to a Mac. The person upgrading from a 2015 Intel MacBook that takes 40 seconds to open Spotify. For them, this is a revelation. For everyone else, it's the floor of a building you should keep climbing. Level 2, the MacBook Air 13-inch M5. $1,099. This is the most purchased laptop in Apple's history. Not the most impressive. The most purchased. M5 chip, 16 GB unified memory, 512 GB storage, 18-hour battery life, no fan, 2.7 pounds. Every generation, reviewers call it the best laptop you can buy for most people. Every generation, they're correct. The thing no one talks about is what no fan actually means. A fanless design isn't just quieter, it means the laptop sustains its performance silently inside a bag, on a lap, in a coffee shop at 85 degrees Fahrenheit. There's no throttling. No heat spike at minute 4 of a video export. It just runs. The honest limitation, the Air has a liquid retina display. The Pro has a liquid retina XDR with promotion, 120 Hz refresh, significantly higher contrast, and mini LED backlighting. You don't notice the difference until you sit next to someone with a Pro. Then you can't unsee it. Who's here? The remote worker, the writer, the finance analyst, the student who finally stopped sharing a laptop. This is the level where the math works for almost everyone. Jump past it without a real reason, and you've paid for performance you'll never use. Level 3, the MacBook Air 15-inch M5. $1,299. Same chip. Same memory. Same specs. Just a bigger screen. The extra $200 buys you 15.3 inches instead of 13.6, a better speaker system, and a display that makes video editing, spreadsheets, and side-by-side windows feel like a different computer. Because spatially, it is. Here's the counterintuitive truth, the 15-inch Air is, by pure size, closer to the Pro than to the 13-inch. But it's still fanless, still a single chip tier, and still limited to 2 external displays maximum. Who buys the 15 over the 13? Not power users. People who stare at screens for 9 hours and don't want to squint. The person who would have bought an external monitor but realized they'd rather just carry the screen with them. It's the most underrated purchase in the entire lineup. Level 4, the MacBook Pro 14-inch M5. $1,599. The name says Pro. The chip says otherwise. This model runs the base M5, same chip as the Air, but adds something the Air physically cannot have, a fan. That cooling system means the Pro can sustain peak performance under prolonged load without thermal limits. For a 2-hour video render, the Air slows down. The Pro doesn't. You also get the XDR display, 1000 nits sustained brightness, mini LED backlighting, promotion 120 Hz. If you've ever seen a MacBook Pro display next to a MacBook Air display, you understand why some people buy this for the screen alone. The ports matter too. An SD card slot and HDMI live on the side. No dongle required. That sounds minor until you've been the person fumbling for a USB-C adapter at a client presentation. Who's here? The photographer who needs sustained export performance. The developer who runs a local server, a browser, and 3 terminals simultaneously. The person who tried the Air, loved it, but kept watching the CPU graph spike at exactly the wrong moment. Level 5, the MacBook Pro 14-inch M5 Pro. $2,199. This is where the machine changes category entirely. The M5 Pro has an 18-core CPU and a 20-core GPU. The jump from M5 to M5 Pro isn't incremental, it's the difference between a machine that handles professional work and a machine that was designed for it. Memory starts at 24 GB. Storage starts at 1 TB. Thunderbolt 5 replaces Thunderbolt 4, which means external GPU support, faster drives, and display bandwidth that lets you drive a 6K monitor at full resolution without thinking twice. This is the last level where the laptop fits in a carry-on and nobody notices what it is. Above here, the machine starts having a presence. Who buys this? The video editor who bills $500 an hour and cannot afford a render that takes twice as long because they went cheap on RAM. The software engineer at a company where the MacBook is a business expense, not a personal one. The data scientist running models locally because cloud compute is too slow or too expensive. These are people for whom the laptop isn't a device, it's the primary tool that generates revenue. Level 6, the MacBook Pro 16-inch M5 Max $3,899. At this level, the laptop stops competing with other laptops. It starts competing with workstations. The M5 Max has an 18-core CPU and a 40-core GPU. Memory bandwidth hits 546 GB per second, more than most dedicated graphics cards from 2 years ago. Storage starts at 2 TB. The display is 16.2 inches with 1600 nits peak brightness. The battery lasts 22 hours. This machine draws 140 watts under full load and sustains it without throttling. The use case isn't heavier version of the M5 Pro. It's a different category of work. 3D rendering. Color grading raw footage from a RED camera. Training a machine learning model locally. Compiling an entire iOS codebase in under a minute. The M5 Max does these things at speeds that used to require a desktop and an external GPU. Who sits here? Music producers, feature film editors, VFX artists, and ML engineers who have outgrown cloud infrastructure costs. The person who maxes this out to 128 GB of unified memory, which is an option, is running workloads that would require $40,000 in server hardware to match 3 years ago. Level 7, the MacBook Pro 16-inch M5 Max, fully configured. $7,349. M5 Max chip. 18-core CPU. 40-core GPU. 128 GB of unified memory. 8 TB of SSD storage. Nanotexture display. Nobody needs this laptop. People buy it anyway. The 128 GB memory configuration exists for one reason: AI inference. Running large language models locally, models with 70 billion parameters, requires memory, not compute. 128 GB is the threshold where you stop streaming from a server and start running the model in your hands. For AI researchers, that's not a luxury. It's infrastructure. The nanotexture display is optically etched glass that eliminates glare in a way no matte film or coating can match. It's the same technology Apple puts in the Pro Display XDR. At this price, it's the screen that makes everything above it look like compromise. Here's the number that matters: the maxed MacBook Pro costs $7,349. The first Macintosh portable in 1989 cost $7,300. Apple is fully aware of this. It's not coincidence. Here's what the lineup actually is. It's not a product range. It's a capability spectrum. The Neo says, here's the Mac experience. The Air says, here's what most people actually need. The Pro line says, here's what happens when the laptop is the job. Every other laptop brand competes on specs. Apple competes on the question of who you are and what you're building. The chip was never the point. What you ship with it is. Subscribe. I break down how things actually work, not how the spec sheet describes them. See you in the next one.